So here's where we're starting. Our budget makes a larger state investment in the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation than the last three budgets combined to help them continue to aid and assist all of you. We're proposing $200 million to support our small businesses, especially in retaining and rehiring workers. And we're proposing creating a new $100 million venture capital fund to kickstart innovation and invest in Wisconsin's ingenuity. Wisconsin has historically lagged the rest of the country in venture capital investment. Now more than ever is the time for us to recommit to innovation and economic growth to come out of this COVID-19 pandemic stronger than ever before. Our budget also increases the state minimum wage and supports low and medium income families with $450 million in tax relief for Wisconsin's working families. And it invests more than $43 million in Wisconsin's agricultural industry to bolster rural prosperity, encourage innovation, and find new opportunities for growth. We're also, and this is really critical, I believe, making a historic investment in broadband, nearly $200 million, which we know is so critical to keep folks learning, working, and connecting. And we're going to help our small businesses support their workers by creating a small business retirement savings program to help fill the retirement gap that is most acute for the employees of our small businesses. And finally, while our biennial budget moves through the legislative process, and for those of you who have heard the term, it's like watching sausage being made. You're right. That term is that statement is accurate. But we also know businesses across our state need help now. So we're working to we're looking forward to receiving more than $3 billion through President Biden's American Rescue Plan that will help us support folks across the state get through the rest of this pandemic. And so while we're still waiting for final guidance from the federal government, we know our small businesses will be a top priority for those funds. So I'm happy to be here with all of you today to hear about your experiences, to learn, and to continue our important partnership. I know it's not easy to take time away from your businesses, but I want to express my sincere thanks to you for being here today. So with that, I'll hand things over to Missy to get us started. Thanks so much. And Missy, it's all yours.
Thanks, Governor. It's good to see you, and it's good to see everybody. One of the best parts of my job in a crazy time like this is to be able to talk with businesses, because just the little snippets of information that you're able to give the governor and myself helps inform us as we think about what we can do to help and what kind of assistance you need as you're going about your work. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. The first thing we're going to do is just let everybody know who we're talking to and who's on the phone with us. So I'm going to go around to everyone and we'll do quick introductions, and then we'll dive into our conversation. So we're going to start out first with my friend Marjorie Rucker.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marjorie Rucker. I am here today to represent the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition. We're a coalition of 18 different chambers of commerce and CDFIs across the state of Wisconsin that serve ethnic and diverse businesses throughout the state. I'm going to turn it back over to Missy.
Thanks, Marjorie. And now Rachel Baressa. Rachel?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Baressa, and I'm a fifth-generation farmer here in central Wisconsin. I do direct market grass-fed beef on my farm. I've got about 100 acres. In addition to the farm, I'm also active with quite a few other of the agricultural organizations in the state and represent Grazing Network and the local farmer-led watershed group. Thank you for having me. I'll hand it back over. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. David Trotter.
Hi, thanks for having me. David Trotter up in Neenah, Wisconsin. I run a small investment fund called the Winnebago Seed Fund, and we make small investments in Wisconsin startups. So typically 2 to 3 person teams, try to get them 1 to 2 years of runway. And we've made 10 investments so far over the last 3 years. And really looking forward to discussing the $100 million portion, how it could benefit the the startups that we've already seeded. So thank you.
Great, thank you, David. And Jasmine Banks.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Banks, and I am the CEO and founder of Perfect Imperfections, which is my handcrafted natural body care line. I created Perfect Imperfections after the passing of my mom from uterine cancer, and our mission is to empower women to appreciate life daily and care for themselves with safe, chemical-free body products. As someone whose family has been in the state of Wisconsin, but most specifically in Madison for 5 generations, it is an honor to have a seat at this table. So thank you for having me. And now I will pass it back to Secretary Hughes.
Thank you, Jasmine. And Kat Becker.
Hi, I am Kat Becker. I am the owner of Cattail Organics. I am a direct market and small wholesale farmer producing organic vegetables in Athens, Wisconsin. We're right on the Taylor County, Lincoln County, Marathon County line. I'm also here representing the face of rural telecommunications and broadband issues. All of my kids are, I'm sure I'll talk about it, but my kids are quarantined, so they're using all of our pretty bad satellite internet at home, and there's no cell phone service or landlines on our road. So I'm at the end of the road talking on the phone. So pardon my setting, but it's the best reception I could get, and I will hand it back over.
Thanks, Kat. It's fantastic. I love it. You've got not only the hardworking small business person, but also the broadband issues on the table. Let's see, Priscilla Prado.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Prado. I owner of Midwest Accounting and Consulting here in Milwaukee and Madison. I own a tax preparation and business consulting firm for small businesses, mainly focusing in the Latino community here in Milwaukee. We help the small businesses, get started on the right foot. Kind of give them consulting on, sales and use tax and local exposition tax. We have clients all over in Wisconsin, Dells, in Green Bay, Madison, Kenosha, Milwaukee, Waukesha. So we service a lot of clients that have that language barrier, but want to start a business and are eager and hungry to make their own money and contribute to the economic development of our state. So that's where we come in and we help them and give them the orientation that they need for that. And I'll hand it back to Secretary Hughes.
Thank you, Priscilla. Now we're going to go to Kurt Vecina.
Bonjour, that's Ojibwe for hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Kurt Basney. Along with my wife, Linda, we are both registered members of the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior Chippewa Indians, and we own Copper Crow Distillery. We're the first native-owned distillery in the United States. We're one of just a very few handful of distillers across the world who use cheese whey to make some of our signature spirits. We do have a tasting room, although due to COVID, we don't generally allow customers inside. And we have distribution throughout the state of Wisconsin. So if you're looking for some of our products, we are available in most areas of Wisconsin. And Secretary Hughes, back to you.
Thank you, Kurt. And then we have Marika Penterman. Marika? Marika was with us before.
Mute. I was muted. Sorry. I
are.
forgot to unmute. I'm sorry. My name is Marika Penterman. I'm from Thorpe, Wisconsin, original born and raised in the Netherlands, a tiny little country. And we felt that Holland was not giving us the opportunities to continue farming. So we moved in 2002 to Wisconsin. Where else could you go for dairy farming? And in 2006, I was starting to miss my cheese. We started to make Gouda cheese. We were nominated the best cheese in 2013. We started with one team member. We grew our team over 40 people. Our cheeses you can find in high-end supermarkets through the United States. And we started to export some cheeses also. And we had the honor to have Governor Evers at our location, and I hope you will come back someday too. So thank you for having me.
Thanks, Marika. I feel like we could make a connection between Kurt and Marika and have some cheese way conversations there. Marika, I have to sneak in also and say that my husband is Trip Hughes, so he's going to be jealous that I get to talk to you today. I'm sure he would
Say
say
hi to him.
We're going to go to Paul Christensen now.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Secretary Hughes, and thank you, Governor Evers, for giving me the opportunity to join the group here. So 1901 Inc., owner and CEO. We go back since the year 1901. We do commercial industrial work across the whole state of Wisconsin. We're a multi-trade company, so we employ steam fitters, sheet metal workers, plumbers, electricians, control guys, and fire protection fitters. We do a lot of public and private sector work. So a lot of state of Wisconsin work, but then also the private sector work. A little bit about myself. I grew up in a small town, Indiana. First job was detasseling corn, so understand the farmers and ag on the phone as well. Moved to Wisconsin when I was a freshman in high school and started working for the company I currently own. Started working as a freshman in high school, mowing the lawn in the summer times. Then worked in our shipping and receiving department after I graduated and decided I wanted to get into trades and follow my father's footsteps. So became a steam fitter and went through the 5-year apprenticeship program, quickly became a foreman and a project manager. And then in 2011 had purchased the company as the sole owner. So we do roughly in 2011, about 23 million a year and had 120 employees. Fast forward 10 years later today, and we were at about 65 million with 235 employees. So a lot of rapid growth and definitely a crazy year we've all been living in though. So looking forward to the discussions here, and back to you, Secretary.
Thank you, Paul. And finally, we've got Michelle Tressler.
Hello, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm Michelle Tressler. My husband and I founded Hinterland Brewery back in 1995. We have since grown the brewery to add a restaurant and made our way through. We're on our third location in the Green Bay area, and we are now happily located across the street from Lambeau Field, adjacent to the Titletown district. So we were really happy to anchor that project 4 years ago and move our entire operation here. We're now in a 24,000 square foot facility that houses our brewery. Pre-pandemic, we did about 6,800 barrels of beer, and we welcomed about 200,000 guests annually with about 130 employees. Of course, since the pandemic, the restaurant side of our business has dramatically decreased, frankly, as well as our brewing side. We're at about 50% down from pre-pandemic, hoping to see to 2021 grow and get us back to where we were before. But I'm very excited to be here and a part of this conversation. I feel like we had, a lot of changes, a lot of issues that became more apparent during the pandemic, issues that were already problems that really came to the forefront. And I'm anxious to use this tragic year really for the better and turn it around and start to fix some of the systems that were in place that really didn't work for a lot of people pre-pandemic. So I'm excited to be a part of this opportunity to make change and bounce back better, as the governor's been saying. And I think it's really a good slogan because it's exactly what we've needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. You actually give a great segue to our first question, which is to talk about how the past year has affected your business, but what also are these issues that you're seeing? And you touched on that a little bit. So why don't I just stick with you for a minute and you can talk a little bit about what you're seeing.
Well, being in the restaurant business, obviously, right away, I believe it was March 13th, 12th, 13th, we shut our doors. At that point, we didn't know how long we'd be closed. We tried to keep our management team on our payroll for a couple weeks, but it became obvious that that wasn't sustainable. And again, initially we thought this could potentially be only a few weeks. It became obvious that the shutdown would go on much longer. But we really had to face some issues. I think probably the one main issue I think is important to touch on in this context would be healthcare. We're a small business who has provided healthcare for our employees for many, many years. In a restaurant business, that's not entirely usual, it's not typical. We've been offering, the 26 years we've been in business, I think at least 15 of them or so, we've offered health insurance. Every year we see those premiums go up and up and up. I believe this year in 21, it was up, our initial quote was about 40% up if we were to keep everything the same. But when we shut down and had to temporarily furlough our employees, it really, it made the healthcare issue very obvious. And those people that participated in our healthcare program were vulnerable. They were technically supposed to have been terminated and go to COBRA. My husband and I agreed that there was no chance we were doing that unless somebody made us. So we faced some challenges, and it became really obvious that, number one, I don't know if it's appropriate for people to have all of their healthcare decisions, or at least their ability to maintain it, in the hands of somebody else's decision making. That felt wrong to us, that we had the power to do the right thing or the wrong thing, or what we've been forced to do, which is put people into a COBRA situation, which would have been untenable for most. So healthcare, expansion of Badger Care. We saw some of our staff become eligible for Badger Care in the first time after the furlough, and they love it. They love it. They're very happy with the coverage, and I think that's something. Probably the one thing I could say. There's many about our business that have been affected, and that I think are important for future consideration. But healthcare in particular, it seems an undue burden on us, but it also seems sort of an unfair unfair amount of influence that we have over 130 people in their healthcare. So.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate that. And it's a really important insight that I hadn't thought about that. So I appreciate that. How about other folks? We're just going to open this up for everyone to, it's a little unwieldy, but you kind of have to just start talking, and I'll call on you, or I'll call on you. But how has the past year affected your business? What have you done differently to adapt? Looks like Kurt's raising his hand. So.
Sure. So when the pandemic first started and the governor issued the stay-at-home order, even though we're within the boundaries of the reservation, we elected to honor that. And so we closed the doors. We did do some curbside pickup for bottle sales, but we did close the tasting room, and we closed the doors, and then we applied for PPP. We did receive a very small PPP forgivable loan. So we were able to keep our 8 employees, to get them some work. But what we also did is the tribe had extended their stay-at-home order not only to include the governor's stay-at-home order, but extended by a couple of weeks. And even though we didn't have to honor that, we elected to do so, just for the safety of our tribal community. So we didn't actually open up until the middle of June. Well, in the meantime, we had invested quite heavily, knowing that we weren't going to have people in the tasting room. Linda and I pulled money out of our personal savings to be able to build an outdoor patio section. So we spent probably tens of thousands of dollars to establish a patio, put up socially distanced picnic tables and a couple of fire pits. And that, frankly, is what saved our business. We were able to continue to operate, and we actually were able to increase the number of employees that we had, not by much, but by a little bit. It ended up really saving our business. A couple of other things that happened is that we were part of the We're All In grant. We received a small grant from the state for the We're All In project, and things went along real well and continue to go well. Even my wife is very COVID conscious, so the tasting room still is not open to the public. But we've got we're still doing the picnic tables outside and fire pits, and people are coming. I think various aspects of the tourism industry suffered greatly over the past year, but in the Bayfield area, tourism was up, and that was good for us. So going into this year, we attempted to apply for the second round of PPP, only to find out that we didn't have a quarter that showed a 25% reduction over the 2019 gross receipts. We were close. We were within just a couple of percentage points, but that cut us out of the second round of PPP. So, I think going forward, I think it would be great if the Evers administration can look forward to helping not only my small business but other small businesses, so that we're able to survive and go forward. And Missy, I guess I could go on, but I need to give some other people a turn.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you, Kurt. And I just had a lesson on the a little teeny lesson on what's included in the America Rescue Plan for restaurants. And I think we'll probably be putting up some information about that. It's pretty complex, but I think there's opportunities for restaurants and businesses to get help there. So we'll make sure we get that information to you. I think Kat has her hand raised.
So I'm not good at being brief. I'm going to try to be brief, and I did want to kind of circle back on the question of health insurance and then also tie that into unemployment, because I did see an unemployment system reform in the budget and wanted to make sure that I touched on that a little bit. In brief, our business grew dramatically. We doubled our gross sales, which was our plan. We hit and exceeded our projected growth. And part of the reason we did that, and I just want to make sure that everyone hears this, is because we had grant funding from the Buy Local, Buy Wisconsin program. And we had applied before the pandemic. We received it. But that growth plan that we had put in place through that grant, we were able to carry out. And we were able to redirect all of the expansion in restaurants into farmers market. So farmers market has not been something I was interested in doing. It tends to have a lower return. We pivoted into online sales with in-person pickup, and we're able to grow that part of the business temporarily. So that's one caveat. I'm very excited to see the expansion of similar programs in the budget. It's incredible how much $15,000 of marketing and technical support can provide, and the matched funds also ensure that producers are really doing what they need to do. So health insurance, I think, in agriculture is one of the most important issues. And I want to make it clear that there are a lot of farmers at a similar scale to myself. So we have a gross sales of around $250,000. We're looking to kind of grow that to around 400 in the next few years. But in our growth, a lot of us end up not growing and not fulfilling our capacity because our concerns around healthcare are so great that we choose to keep our families on Badger Care. And for us, we've really had to plan for my kids to eventually maybe not get Badger Care. And that's a terrifying thing from a small business perspective, not because of the money. I'm happy to pay for health insurance, but because the federal tax credit-based system really doesn't function for farmers. I don't need tax credits. We already have access to a lot of forms of tax benefit. And so that system just doesn't work. And I would love to be able to buy into Badger Care for my children. And that's my number one issue. And I think you'd see a lot of rural entrepreneurship and, well, I guess you don't tax our income, but tax growth federally if we had access to that, even a buy-in program where we had better access. The other thing for my employees, because most of my employees are seasonal, is that we don't have access to, because my payroll isn't big enough, they don't have access to unemployment. And so I called multiple times to beg to be let into the unemployment system. I tried to figure out how we could possibly get a quarter of over $20,000. And last year we had such hard time hiring, so we were only hired at half the capacity we needed, that we couldn't hit that threshold. And so being able to buy in, so that my employees have some sort of security is really important, because we ended up basically putting money into savings so that we could pay employees if they lost their other jobs. A lot of people who work seasonally in agriculture are students or have other jobs in the service sector for the winter for at least several months. And for us, that was a really big area where we didn't actually realize. I thought, like, if I opt in, they'll let me opt in. And I didn't realize that I couldn't get access to unemployment no matter how much I was willing to pay. And that's deeply problematic for a lot of reasons, especially since vegetable work in the upper Midwest is heavily seasonal, and no matter what I was producing, there's almost no way I'd be running at full capacity year round. So those were the issues I wanted to mention. And I really am excited about a lot of the capacity building for grants, because I think, especially for businesses like my own that were entering a growth phase, being able to stabilize yourself and really target your growth was, that was an opportunity that we got through that grant program. So I will pass it back to you, Ms.
Thank you, Kat. Really appreciate that. It's those little nuanced places where small businesses run into headaches and challenges that they want to try and overcome that is really helpful to hear. It looks like we're going to go to Paul next.
Thank you, Secretary. Yeah, so for 1901, kind of on the opposite side of the spectrum as Curtis was, Curtis basically went into the full shutdown, rightfully so there with the food. We were fortunate, if you want to say, that we were deemed essential, being construction, and that brought on not the financial stresses of my employees that some of, like Curtis's people, maybe went through, but the safety and mental health of our employees, just wondering, we had a lot of people concerned, well, why am I at work when there's this COVID going around and other people are home? And, it takes leadership to explain to people that we have a responsibility, just like our doctors do. If our doctors all dragged up and went home, we'd be in a really bad spot right now, that we would not be on a proper pathway like I think we are. And for construction companies, we have that same responsibility because we do a ton of hospital and clinic work. So right away out of the gates, it was very scary. We applied for PPP money because we had a lot of projects that we were just awarded that were getting canceled completely or put on hold indefinitely until further notice. And so we were panicking, like, oh man, are we going to start laying people off? We applied for PPP, have some success there, so we were able to keep our numbers good. Well, then we ended up actually growing in our numbers, like Kat did, and that was basically responding to our other people on the front lines, which is our doctors and nurses. We were going to all the clinics in town and converting positive air pressure rooms into negative air pressure rooms so that they could do more COVID testing to, because there was the backup of just even getting people tested. There was all the big lines and everything. So we were converting numerous facilities into the proper rooms for testing conditions, and which ended up being great for our service department and construction, because the jobs we lost out on kind of got that gap got filled with that frontline worker. So we got fortunate in that way. I would say on the construction side, where some of our fear is, and why I'm glad to be on this phone, is how is this bounce back going to go? How is the money going to be spent? Where's it going to go? Because in construction, things usually delay and lag that 12 to 18 months behind the rest of the world. And that's because projects that you do have under contract, they're under contract, that money's already secured. So it's very rare to have a project stop in the middle of it from the pandemic. So those jobs went on. Where it was alarming is we were looking at the architectural numbers. The architects use a matrix that basically provide kind of our forecast of where our construction is going to be in the next 12 to 18 months. And we started seeing the architectural numbers matrix dropping huge to where kind of back to the 06 recession times. And so that was frightening. But I think if we do things the proper way with the capital budget here, and do a Badger bounce back, I think we can bridge that gap for the construction industry, which is a huge part of Wisconsin, is the construction industry. So I think if we spend our monies properly, that we can bridge those gaps, and hopefully the construction industry does not fall in the hole later down the road.
Great, thank you, Paul. And Marjorie.
I will actually defer my comments to the next question. I want to give the business owners time to respond if they want to, so I'll wait.
Okay, well, thanks, Margie. I'm actually going to jump to the next question if I can. I want to talk a little bit about the governor's budget, and you all were provided with some detailed information about it. You know, what thoughts do you have? Where do you see opportunities? And Margie, if you want to jump in, you're on my screen, so you could jump in, and then we can go around.
Yeah, so I just want to say that definitely, you know, we definitely support the budget. I know this is something that we talked about, and I just want to publicly thank Secretary Hughes and all of the advocates that we have at WEDC for the great job that they're doing. You know, they've really been responsive to our needs as far as listening to what's going on around the state of Wisconsin and working with the governor's office to make sure that these funds can go to really help us recover and for us to be strong. So I just want to thank you guys for that. But what I would say is, you know, definitely the money for the underserved communities is so important. You know, the $10 million investment there is going to be critical and huge. Also supporting the organizations like mine and all of the partners of the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition. We cannot do the work that we do as far as helping these businesses to sustain, pivot, or grow without the support of WEDC and other partners. So we definitely, you know, need and appreciate that. And then, you know, just with the block grant funding as well. I know that you know, that additional 10 million to go towards the original allocation will also be huge in helping us to move forward. So again, you know, those are the three items as far when it comes to small businesses within the state and definitely within the ethnic and diverse community. But those funds are so important because it really will help us as technical assistance providers, as well as those businesses, do the work that we need to do to stay strong and viable in the state.
Great, thank you, Marjorie, so much. Priscilla, you had your hand up before I asked the question, so just share with whatever you're ready to share.
Yeah, it's in regards to this last question. Yes, I'm really excited for this this budget to contribute even for the small businesses in our Latino community. There's a lot of just the language barrier for them. It's really hard to get the message out of what's out there for them. So for me, it's just keeping constant communication with my clients, being there to guide them and kind of hold their hand. You know, I think the worst part for us was that our community culturally, they didn't know how to use the computer. So although I can do my job completely remotely, they didn't know how to turn it on, how to click on a link, how to do that. So that was the most challenging. And right now I'm trying to find a way to promote that, to promote classes, to promote technology, just to get them started, because that's our future now. That is what we need to focus on. Another thing is a pivot has been used a lot, and it's true. We're all pivoting, even just down to you know, the regular people who want to see, okay, you know what, I was laid off. What do I do now? How do I get out of this? And it's the startups. You know, I've had a lot of startups that were happening after the pandemic, or you know, after the order came through, and they started their business, but there's no funding for them. So they're trying to make this contribution, but where do I get funding? How come I can't get that funding? So the funding for the kickstarting innovation for startups is awesome, because hopefully that would get them some motivation to pivot again and see that there is a way out of this. There is a way out of this pandemic for, you know, for everybody in every community, not just, you know, the big companies or the bigger startups or the bigger, smaller companies, you know, because, you know, they're little ones, you know, people who make food, sell food, or are the, you know, the small businesses on Mitchell Street, or the ones on 27th Street, or, you know, those that are really, really working hard, but are not seeing any outcome out of it. So that's what I'm definitely looking forward to let them know and giving them that news that there hopefully is going to be something out there for them in the future. So thank you.
Thanks, Priscilla. I appreciate that. And, you know, when we were doing our We're All In grant applications, we really saw the challenges that businesses had in uploading documents or getting the right documents. And it doesn't have anything at all to do with how they are as business people, right? it's completely unrelated. And so it gave us the opportunity to really think differently about how to reach out to businesses and how to help them. So I really appreciate what you're saying.
Thank you.
David, I think I'm going to call on you because you had mentioned that you wanted to give some thoughts on the venture fund.
Yeah.
And your thoughts about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. First, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of our portfolio companies that, like other startups in Wisconsin, that have adapted and changed over the last year. For example, one of our portfolio companies that we invested in is a company called Genturi in Verona. And in 2019, they had about $500,000 of sales. And when COVID hit, everything shut down. And they went from 3 employees to 40 employees in about 3 months, and they started making COVID collection kits. And they went from $500,000 to over $6 million for revenue in 2020. And they're not the only example out there of people that are changing and making new technologies out of such a bad situation as well. 3 of our other portfolio companies, one called Spin that does live stream shopping, that you think would do well in an environment like this. AirDeck, so on-demand sales presentations as well. So two Madison companies. So a lot of examples of people trying to make the best out of a bad situation and create businesses out of it as well. Now, to your question, what you're asking about of what the potential $100 million means to the startup community, it's a game changer. There's no doubt. I think when you look at the bigger companies that are raising, bigger startups that are raising larger funds now, those companies started 5, 6, 7 years ago. I would love to see, in the plan, something to encourage more early stage startups, pre-seed and seed. And I think that'll help attract other capital to come outside the state. And then obviously everything that you're doing with WEDC, there's not a day that goes by I don't talk to Joey or Chris at WEDC, with the tax credits, with QNBV tax credits, all those are helping push new investors into the asset class as well. So I thank you for that as well.
Great, thanks, David.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be remiss if I didn't go to my boss and ask him if he has anything he wants to jump in with at this point. Governor?
It took me a second. No, I'm going to save mine for the end, but I really, I appreciate the comments. Clearly, this has been a time for struggle and innovation at the same time, but there are things that we can do going forward. We should one of the people here have to sit at the end of the road because they don't have a good broadband, for a small example. And you think about the, how important that access to broadband is. And that's something that transcends politics, frankly. And so we're really glad to be part of the solution there. And so, no, I'll say my thoughts for the end, but just, a lot of folks are on here are, to some extent are related to tourism and we didn't do anything innovative, but the DNR in the state parks had double or triple the number of people that they've ever had before visiting their state parks. And so we were, the state of Wisconsin was kind of an outlet for people that are looking for something to do that was healthy and frankly, COVID-free. The number of out-of-state people that came to Wisconsin to use our state parks, I think, quadrupled this last year. So the good news is that we already have something in place that people can use to make sure that they can get outside and do something productive of their recreational time.
Great.
So I'll hold on to the end. I'm not sure everybody has had a chance to weigh in, have they?
No, I have a couple. I have Jasmine hasn't had a chance to weigh in. So Jasmine, I'll give you a chance to add any wisdom.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So a couple of things. I would like to say that I do not have a brick and mortar. So being able to access different pop-up markets, different spaces previous to COVID was how I earned my keep. And so when the city or when the state shut down, in March of 2020, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because at that moment I did not actually have a website. I was able to create a website, and that's where my income generated. But because prior to COVID, I was able to manage the level of interactions that I would have with customers because of having a website and being open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. I was starting to be inundated with orders because the community was so welcoming and so awesome. So the grant that I was able to get through Dane County definitely helped me to keep my business afloat, because I don't know what I would have done prior to that. So I think, what do I envision as the biggest challenge for small businesses coming out of the pandemic? I think it's being able to access that funding. And like we've talked about, the business owners on this call have talked about, is being able to access that funding, being able to even know what funding is available to you and what do you need in order to qualify for that funding. Because sometimes it feels like it's overwhelming. There's so many different choices, and maybe I don't fit in this box. Do I fit in this box? Trying to figure out exactly where you fit. So again, I think I can't say enough about the bounce back order. I think I'm here because of the We're All In grant. And yeah, so thank you. Back to you, Secretary Hughes.
Thanks, Jasmine. And definitely getting good information out to the businesses and what you can trust is incredibly important. How about Rachel?
Sure. I guess I'll kind of touch on that second question and kind of give my budget highlights, but I believe that the challenges kind of coming out of COVID are similar to the ones going into it, where we don't really, there's a lot of uncertainty still with what, as a direct marketer, our customer demand's going to be. And so, yeah, the highlights in the package with expanding the local and international market opportunities through grants, I think, are really important. Investing in rural economies through infrastructure, I think, will also help stabilize and grow communities. I, as a livestock producer, am really happy about all the meat processing ones, but I think there should also be a focus on other agricultural processing, other agricultural processing efforts, like small grains and creameries, other value-added options. I always have this idea of rural ecology in my mind, where it's, you know, community, culture, agriculture, and economy, and how those four components are all very much intertwined. So I think supporting farmers and the community through food is really important, especially with all the farm to school provisions. And then the other side of it, as someone that works with a lot of other farmers, the watershed grants and the prioritization of farmer-led conservation groups. I think a lot of these farmer-led groups have been a huge bridge in building community. At one point, farmers were often the villain when it came to water quality, and now farmers are leading the state as water quality advocates. So continuing to leverage that voice and making agriculture a huge part of the solution. And then my closing line always is, you know, without clean water and robust and diverse agricultural sector, Wisconsin loses so much of what makes it wonderful.
It's really true. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank
And Marika?
Well, first of all, I'm very grateful for the grants that were available for us. We really, truly needed it in the last year. When COVID hit in March, we had a good year, and after a little bit, we heard all these sounds that dairy farmers had to dump their milk. That was devastating. So I'm very grateful for all the grants that were out there, but we're still not out of the clear. Without even the farmer to family grants, I really, truly wouldn't know where we would stand. We partnered up with Hunger Task Force in Milwaukee. They were phenomenal. And we're still partnering up with them. It's really hard, though, when the COVID hit and you have a team of 40 people that you feel responsible for to make sure that there's still food on the table and gas in their tank to show up for work. Because it's hard still to find good people without benefits. I feel like we lost so many good people through the years even, but even now it's hard to be to attract good people without the benefits that we can offer. We have some small benefits, but healthcare is one of the things that we really need. And coming from Holland, I've seen how it can work on a different level. And yeah, I think we have to see that we get that going. I'm glad that that the help out for agriculture, because the reason why we came to Wisconsin is because of the dairy infrastructure. And the camaraderie here in the state in Wisconsin makes me kind of proud being part of Wisconsin. And we have to continue doing that. I think a lot of small businesses, they're such a hardworking community, and sometimes I feel like the dollar has no value. Like everything becomes so big and so expensive, and yet with small businesses, they make a dollar count. So for small businesses, they can make a dollar still put true value on a dollar. And I want to thank you for the support that has been there, and for all the support that you're still planning to implement, and up to a better future. So
thank you, Marika. So we just have a couple minutes left. I don't think we have time to go into the last question, but are there any final thoughts that you have? Something, looks like Paul is raising his hand. Something else just to offer to the governor before we turn it back over. Paul?
Yep, I would. I'd personally like to thank Governor Evers for the proposed capital budget. I think it's a very robust budget, and I will give my personal opinion. I think the construction industry is about one of the biggest snowballs of money. It's how do we stretch our dollar as far as possible, and I think the construction is one of those. To the point, AGC, Association of General Contractors, they just did a recent study. Reports every $1 in construction spending ends up turning into $1.81 of economic activity. And I don't know how they actually went and put that study together, but I will tell you, being a tradesman myself, on why that is. So here's how construction works. Construction, when you have a project start, you immediately have a bunch of people that are employed to build that building. As soon as that building is done, you have more people employed that are going to be in that building working. And what else happens with that money, though, is me as a tradesman, construction, not all, but a lot of construction people, we do make a great living and wage, but we also like to spend our money. My dad used to always harp on me because I had all the snowmobiles, four-wheelers, pickup trucks, and all that stuff. My dad would be like, Paul, you're living paycheck to paycheck. I said, yeah, Dad, that's why I work, is so I can enjoy these things. And that is the construction industry. It is the biggest industry of people that are buying trucks, cars, snowmobiles, four-wheelers, fishing, hunting. They support our local restaurants, our bars. They spend their money. They live paycheck to paycheck. Now, shame on them for doing that, but they are economy boosters for doing that. I used to always give my dad crap because he made a lot of money. And I said, Dad, you're doing nothing for our economy because you just sock it away in the bank and don't do anything with it. So I do feel construction is the biggest bang for your buck. So I appreciate this robust proposal, Governor Evers. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I love the Paul versus his dad economic theory. Kat?
I have two things that I wanted to make sure to talk about. I think my broadband situation is probably quite clear, but I'm just going to retouch on the fact that no matter how much money I spend, I cannot get something good. And so, like, even if I had, unless I put up a tower, I cannot buy anything good. And the same is true for cell service. And the same is true, I can't get a landline because of the telecommunications deregulation. And so, like, really understand that targeting broadband for areas where it's a public safety issue is important. The second thing I wanted to just make sure that the governor heard, and I think this was an issue with some of the funding that came from CARES Act and to farm families, is that farming has really traditionally in Wisconsin been thought about this family farm Schedule F, group of people. And I think that it's really important to understand that there's a much broader set of people that are important to feeding our communities and also who depend on that income, even when it's a small amount of income, who do not file Schedule F. And I know the Department of Agriculture kind of learned about this, but especially immigrant farmers, farmers who don't speak English as a first language, farmers of color, and those that work cooperatively to feed their communities really need to be part of a lot of these grant programs. And it's a great time to build relationships through some of these grants. So Buy Local, Buy Wisconsin, working with groups of farmers that market cooperatively, but not in an official way. And so I just want to draw attention to that because those people are really important. They're very important in Marathon County. They're very important in produce farming and to the food and to the eating and food security of both urban and rural areas.
Great. Thank you, Kat. And Marjorie, you're going to bring us home before we turn it back over to the governor. And you're on mute.
Kat, I just want to thank you for your comment about those different cooperative models for gathering support for small businesses, especially micros, because it is so important. So thank you for that point. I just want to tell every business owner on this phone that the work that we do through the Ethnic and Diverse Business Coalition, we're really trying to get our act together when it comes to making sure that all of you, when you need access to resources, finances, et cetera, that you're able to get them without a lot of confusion. We know that even before COVID and after COVID, you have a business to run. It is our job as technical assistance providers and access to capital providers to make sure that you can access that as seamlessly as possible and know where you need to go. So, you know, over and above the budget and the money to support all of the efforts that we're doing to help you all, I just want to let you all know that, you know, we are working to get our act together in Wisconsin and not to be so siloed, so that we can make sure that we're serving all of you and making sure that you guys can have those healthy, viable businesses in the state. And I can say that because Secretary Hughes makes sure that we do so. She holds us accountable to that. And we try to pass the test every time. So thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie. All right, Governor, take it away.
All right, I am unmuted. Well, first of all, thanks everybody. What a wonderful hour this has been, to be honest with you. It did bring people all across the state of Wisconsin, different levels of small businesses, to individual entrepreneurs, to folks that may have you know, several dozen employees, and the range of conversation today was really important for me to hear, and frankly, it gets back to the issue of something that I think is special about Wisconsin is our resilient nature and our ability to innovate even under the most, you know, horrific circumstances that we face. The one thing that I will talk about, because not everybody brought this up, but I think it's something that in a short period of time that we as a state really do have to, whether you have 18 employees or whether you are employed by it's a single person. And I remember this from actually just after I was elected, I was talking to somebody. He was an entrepreneur, one person. I can't even remember what his startup was all about, but he set aside X number of dollars a month for his gym membership. And he felt that if he kept kind of healthy by exercising at the gym, that essentially was his health insurance. Well, yeah, that's all he could afford, right? And at the end of the day, and I think, I can't remember who it was, Michelle talked about it the very first time about, and Michelle had probably more employees than I think a lot of the others here, but her feeling as an owner of a really successful enterprise, a restaurant in Green Bay, and her feeling of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you felt somewhat inadequate as an owner because you couldn't follow through on making sure that your hardworking long-term employees had insurance. And I think everybody here in some fashion has issues around health insurance and making sure that you're healthy. And, you know, connecting the dots around economic development got to do with a lot of different things, but it sure has a lot to do with healthcare. And expanding Medicaid is really important for this state. Coming up with a public option so that people can buy into Badger Care is really important for the state. Obviously, as a Democrat, I'm having trouble convincing people on the other side of that. But we have to solve that somehow. I mean, that stops innovation from happening. When people are fearful for their health, they become tentative about the future, and we just can't. People have to feel safe in their life, whether it's at home or at work, and obviously the workplace is some place where they should be able to feel safe, and so that's something I'll continue to fight for, and making sure that we have good health coverage, and Medicaid expansion is a huge thing, and you all understand the politics behind that. Some people believe that's welfare. Some people like me believes that it is it's a right to have some sort of feeling of safety and good health in your life, no matter if you're working alone or working in a small company. So that's one thing I'll just leave with you. I just there's all sorts of other issues that you brought up about broadband and making sure that we're, the capital budget. Thank you. We want every penny we ask for. First of all, we need it. Second of all, that money turns over time after time after time, and it helps our entire economy. So we'll fight for the right things. We're going to need some help, obviously, but most importantly, it's just been a pleasure for me to interact and hear from all sorts of different small business owners as we look at this, the money that's coming from the Biden administration in the Recovery Act. Obviously, small businesses will be a top priority. They're the ones that really have suffered the most during this pandemic. We have to make sure that we get back to where we were and better going forward. So thanks, everybody. And I know Maddie's going to quick hit the thing and everybody's going to disappear, but thank you so much. I appreciate it.